Night shift at the hotel. Every night at precisely 12:15 a.m., the night clerk at the Grand Blackwood Hotel dutifully recorded the entries in the day's guest book. A few tourists who had just checked out, some business travelers, one woman who just said, "Beautiful." Nothing out of the ordinary. He had gone through the recent guest logs. There was no sign of a Mr. John Doe. There were no keys marked room 213, nor was there any record of a reservation. The manager thought it might be some sort of joke played by one of the prankster maids, but she had recently quit. Still, the next night, the exact same entry appeared in the logbook. This was not a joke. That was, until they noticed this one entry. The same entry that appeared every single night, precisely at 12:15 a.m. They were very much in love and spent the first night laughing, talking, and holding each other close. But the second night was completely different. Just after midnight, a fire broke out in the building. Guests screamed as they fled their rooms. And as the fire raged on, people began to wonder if anyone was in room 213. After all, it had been precisely 31 years since anyone had entered the room. What secrets could it possibly be hiding? It wasn't a tragedy, but what happened next was downright eerie. Lights would flicker on and off for no apparent reason, and they heard a blood-curdling scream, after which they never returned to the room. Doors would open and close on their own. Objects would move around on their own. And worst of all, people continued to hear the dragging footsteps in the dead of night. He needed to get into room 213, so he did what the others hadn't thought to do. It was rusty and old, but it was clearly the key to the room. But how could that be? If nobody had entered the room for decades, how could the key still fit in the lock? Since the doorknob was too old to have a digital lock, he simply picked the lock using a paperclip. He pried it open and saw a set of stairs leading down into darkness. "Sorry," the man replied, looking dazed. "I didn't mean to yell at you." The man was not a ghost, but an extremely disturbed human being. He had been trapped in the basement for so long that he had begun to hallucinate. This was the reason Mr. John Doe had been signing the guest book every night. He was not a ghost or a madman, but a lonely man who desperately wanted to connect with another human being. The night clerk introduced himself and asked the man his name. "My name," he said slowly, "is John." He truly believed the people who came to check on him were trying to steal his memories. "I haven't spoken to another human in so long. I just get startled easily." "I thought you were one of them." "Them? What do you mean?" "It's the ones who come to take me away," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "Kank, they come to steal my memories and trap me here forever." "Where did they lead?" The answer became clear when he turned on his flashlight and shined it downwards. Stairs led to the basement, for the room was completely destroyed. The charred bodies could not be recovered. It was almost as if they had evaporated. And saw that he was staring directly at a wall. The wall was covered in scratches and drawings, but one symbol in particular caught the night clerk's eye. It was a clock. The hands on the clock indicated precisely 12:15 a.m., and the man was not hallucinating. His clock was actually right on time. Some people said that maybe the fire had been caused by a short circuit, but others believed something more sinister was at foot, that perhaps the room itself was cursed. To his horror, however, as he neared the room, he saw that the knob had turned black and was crumbling to dust. Everything looked perfectly normal, except for one thing. The windows were boarded up. Why would they have been boarded up all these years if no one was ever inside? And why would a fire hazard be ignored? For decades, guests reported hearing screams in the middle of the night, followed by the sound of shattering glass and footsteps in the hallway. With newfound determination, the night clerk slowly descended the stairs. It smelled musty down here, as if no human had set foot in the place in decades. But he knew he was not alone. He could feel it in his bones. They described the footsteps as dragging and slow, as if whoever was making them was injured or drunk. But then he heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from behind one of the doors. He approached it cautiously, not knowing what to expect. Then he knocked lightly on the wood. Suddenly, the door flew open and a wild-looking man came barreling towards him. Some even reported seeing the shadow of a man dragging himself toward room 213, and sometimes they could hear voices whispering on the wind. And sure enough, when he touched it, his hand went right through. But the incidents continued to escalate. One day, a maid was dusting the shelves when she heard a loud crash. Startled, she turned around and saw that the glass in the window had shattered. But this was not an ordinary window. It was located on the 3rd floor, but like any large building, it had its share of creepy rumors. She immediately assumed it was her imagination, but then the crying grew louder and louder. Eventually, she could hear the woman right outside her door saying, "Let me out. Please, let me out." Then, everything went silent. When she got up the next morning and went out into the hall, she noticed small pebbles at the base of the door. Not knowing what else to do, she called the police, but they found nothing unusual. One of the most famous stories was that of room 213, which had allegedly been sealed off for decades. The entry read simply, "John Doe," and below it was an unsigned time card confirming it was indeed made at 12:15 a.m. Most of it was indecipherable, but these words stood out above the rest. "She's in the basement, but I can't get down there. Help me." Was this the work of a madman or a ghost? But there was one thing about the signature that was extremely strange. John Doe had not checked in. For several nights in a row, the night clerk had tried to solve the mystery. With nothing to lose, the night clerk decided to enter the mysterious room 213 himself. Upon entering, he saw that the walls were completely covered with writing, scrawled by someone in a frenzy. A mysterious past. The Grand Blackwood Hotel had been around since the early 1900s. It had hosted presidents, celebrities, and countless honeymooners. It all started back in 1958 when a young married couple checked into the room for their honeymoon. When firefighters finally put out the blaze, they found the charred remains of the young lovers. After this incident, the management decided to seal off room 213 forever. But the strangest part of the story was yet to come. The staff tried their best to ignore the strange occurrences, chalking them up to overactive imaginations. Another time, a guest staying in the room next to 213, aka room 212, was awoken in the middle of the night by the sound of a woman sobbing. As the years went on, these strange occurrences continued unabated. One night, a group of friends dared each other to enter room 213 as soon as they opened the door. However, the lights went out, a ghostly revelation. In the present day, the night clerk was determined to put an end to the mystery once and for all. To his surprise, the room was completely empty. All the walls were bare, and the only furniture in the room was a bed, a dresser, and a desk. But that's when he noticed a loose floorboard. Beneath it, he found a key. As he pondered this, he noticed another loose floorboard. Could the mysterious Mr. John Doe be down here somewhere? He walked down a long hallway and came across several doors, each of them covered in grime. "Who are you?" the night clerk asked, taken aback. And that's when the night clerk realized the truth. But where had he been hiding all these years? The night clerk followed his gaze. All of a sudden, the night clerk understood.